just over a month away from Arizona's primary and 4 months away to the general election. Can you believe that? And the most hotly contested seat is really the one currently held by U.S. Senator Jeff Flake, who, as you know, is not seeking re-election. 3 candidates are vying for the GOP nomination for his seat, including former state senator Dr. Kelli, Congresswoman Martha McSally, and former MCSO Sheriff Joe Arpaio. And one of those 3 will be facing the Democratic Party nominee, either Congresswoman Kyrsten Sinema, who we spoke with earlier this month on Good Morning Arizona, or Valley attorney and founder of the Global Institute of Solution-Oriented Leadership, Deedra Abboud, who joins us this morning. Candidate Abboud here to talk about the race and her ambitions to head to Capitol Hill. Good morning. Thanks for being here.
Excellent. Thank you for having me.
We joked about, I talked to you in the commercial, what an incredible year it has been for you. I mean, since declaring your candidacy for the U.S. Senate, you said it feels a little bit more like 2, right?
Yes, because I started preparing for what I wanted to do before.
Okay. So what first sparked your interest in politics? Was there a moment or something that you saw happening in government that you said, I am the voice that needs to speak out right now?
I've been a civil rights and social justice activist in Arizona for 15 years, traveling all over Arizona, bringing marginalized communities together to have conversations. And I looked at 2016 and said, how can I put my voice in here? Whereas normally I hold politicians accountable from the outside, I decided it's time to get on the inside and change some culture in there and have those conversations that we really need to have about things that matter.
So you really came into this race without name recognition necessarily, as some of these other candidates who have been in high-profile positions in the past. So you have some making up to do, but you really encountered some pretty ugly responses to your candidacy early on as you were campaigning. So talk to me about that and about how it's evolved over the last year.
Well, I mean, I had a lot of name recognition, especially within civil rights and social justice communities, and also in interfaith communities. So I didn't start at 0.
Okay.
And we had a lot of, last year, July, we had a bunch of online attacks. We had some nationalist patriots who decided to try to disrupt our events on the ground, and we handled it. We stood up to it, we engaged, we didn't exclude anybody. We understood that every single person in Arizona is a potential constituent and a potential voter. So you have to listen to them even when they disagree with you, and that's what our elected leaders should do. They should get out and engage. And if I can stand up to nationalist patriots, then I feel like our elected leaders can stand up to a few unhappy constituents at town halls.
And we've certainly seen the trend of not wanting to hold town halls or not wanting to face-to-face talk about what the voters are requesting. So give us some ideas of what you would like to do if you were able to represent the state of Arizona in the U.S. Senate.
Well, number one, we need to get money out of politics. And the fact that we have the Dirty Money Petition on the ballot this year is exciting because that's stage 1 of this movement. 97% of the people, regardless of political party, want to get money out of politics. They want to dismantle Citizens United that allows all of this dark money to get in and influence our politicians instead of us. And then also, we've got to have health care for all. Every single industrialized country in the world, including capitalist countries, have figured it out. We can too. There's lots of bills out there that talk about how to do it. There's lots of countries out there that talk about how to do it. We can find our own system that works for everybody.
As you're moving forward in this and you've been traveling around the states, obviously the fact that you're a Muslim American woman is the first impression that you're going to make. And maybe you're in communities where they don't have a big Muslim American population. So what do they want to know about your faith, or how it would influence your work in politics, or how it would not influence at all your role in politics?
I believe that we actually need to have separation of religion and state. I believe that's a foundation, and every single attack on women's sexual freedom and every single attack on the LGBTQ community is a result of people trying to put their religion into law. If there's a wall that needs to be built, that's the wall. And that's one of the things that I talk about when I will go around Arizona, because I don't think that my religion should influence legislation. I think my religion should influence how I decide to live my life, and that's where it should end.
There was a big progressive win in the New York primary, kind of surprising Dems who were watching and expecting an incumbent to easily slide in, at least into the general election. What is this sort of trend towards progressive support, even more so than the traditional Democratic representatives mean to you and your candidacy?
Well, I think Arizona is a lot more progressive than we seem to think right now. I mean, if you look at medical marijuana, it passed, and they've attempted to pass it since the 90s. So we actually, when people care about an issue, they'll turn out and vote. When we give them milquetoast and don't give them something to care about, that's what's going to make people not vote. As far as New York goes, part of the reason why Alexandria was so successful is because she was on the ground doing grassroots, talking to the people, whereas her opponent was avoiding town halls, avoiding debates, and thought that he could just win on name recognition and ads. And people are tired of that. If you're not willing to engage with the voters, if you're not willing to give them at least the opportunity to talk to you and ask you questions that you actually answer, they're willing to vote for someone else.
Okay, so we'll talk about your opponent in this race, Kyrsten Sinema, and also immigration, one of the most important topics for Arizonans, and I know part of your professional background as well. So we'll take a quick break and we'll continue our conversation. Thanks so much for being here. More Good Morning Arizona coming right up. And don't forget, if you want to vote in the primary, registration is coming up July 30th. We continue our discussion with candidate Abboud, who is seeking to fill Senator Jeff Flake's seat in the U.S. Senate. I want to make sure we have some time to chat about immigration. Obviously, it is a hot topic issue across the country, but certainly here in a border state. Not only what we've seen happening at the U.S.-Mexico border, but also the Supreme Court recently upholding what's known as the Trump travel ban. So what is your take on that, and how do you differ maybe from your opposing candidate, Kyrsten Sinema?
Number one, dreamers have done everything that we've ever asked them to do. We're the ones that are going back on even trying to fix a problem. Number two, it is absolutely unacceptable that the United States of America has decided it's okay to put kids in cages. And that's what we need to focus on. Then also, in the debate with all of these major things that are going on, we're missing that just normal people who are going through should be a normal immigration process. It's taking years and fighting and crying and money just to get through a system that actually should be predictable. So we need to get back to fixing the problems, and also, it needs to be one-issue bills. When we're working on really tough issues like immigration, it shouldn't be tacked on to things in piecemeal. We should actually solve a problem and look at the unintended consequences as well.
Well, and as an attorney, if you were looking at an agreement, a legal document, or something that's contractually binding, I mean, it is laughable, if it weren't so sad, the way that these bills move through, because they are so ambiguous. There's one thing that somebody can brag about and one thing that they want to hide.
Yeah. Well, I mean, a lot of times they're not even reading the bills, which is also unacceptable. But, they're not looking at unintended consequences. And that's really sad because so many people have law degrees who are in the government. So if you can't read the bill or at least get a summary, you shouldn't be voting on it.
Polling shows you trailing your opponent. But how do you feel about your realistic chances for getting this nomination or for serving in the U.S. Senate? Or is this campaign a victory already?
Well, this campaign is a victory already because we already started making conversations with people who don't normally get to have conversations with someone who's running about topics that politicians don't usually cover that actually affect people's lives. And there's very little polling on the primary race for the U.S. Senate. And that which exists is usually 70% landlines. And in those polls, I beat my opponent in 18 to 35-year-olds who don't have landlines.
Landlines, the thing of the past, right?
Yes.
The system is a little dated. And I asked you if you two would be taking the stage in any sort of debate, but right now she hasn't confirmed.
Every debate that has been put forward has been declined by my opponent. Okay. I have accepted every single one, and there's supposed to be one with the Arizona Republic coming up on July 26th. I have confirmed, but I have not heard if it's still on.
So in the meantime, you'll continue to hit the road.
Right, because that's what we do. Hit the road, talk to people, get people excited, get people want to engage in the process.
Well, it was a pleasure to meet you, Deedra Abboud. The primary election is scheduled for August 28th, but make sure that you have checked your registration. You need to confirm that registration by July 30th, and the general election is November 6th. 2018. It will be here before you know it. And on AZ Family, we'll be posting some of these interviews with the candidates who are seeking to replace Senator Jeff Flake. Thanks so much for your time. We'll be right back with more Good Morning Arizona.